Hello, hello, and welcome to the first ever Slaying Friends podcast. Been talking about doing this for so long, and we're finally here doing it. I'm joined today with one of my good friends, Anime King. We go way back, mostly playing a lot of battle royales, Fortnite, Apex, yada yada. But today we're gonna kind of take on a different role. We're gonna kind of talk about some deep topics. Today's topic is retaliation and kind of what it means to us to retaliate or to have somebody retaliate on us, and kind of just walk through different walks of life and trying to understand the justifications of it, and just ultimately try to get down to the bottom of why people feel the need to retaliate. So, Anime, with that being said, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Not so bad. So, we didn't get really a big chance to talk before the camera started rolling and everything here, but the topic today, retaliation. I myself personally I've seen this in many forms, and it's one of those things that I feel is absolutely necessary and at the same time absolutely terrible. And there's different things that happen, and I've been thinking about it all day, kind of in the sense of what is a justified reason to retaliate and what isn't a justified reason. What would make one action bad versus a good retaliation in the eyes of many. But I want to pass the question to you. When you hear the word retaliation, what's your knee-jerk reaction to retaliation?
Generally, like the first thing I think of when I hear the word retaliation, I think of defense. You're defending yourself over something, whether it's verbal, physical, mental, so on and so forth.
Okay,
Whatever.
so you
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna really add question into that a little bit. So you see it as a defense against something. You wouldn't say that it's just a reaction.
I would in some senses as well. So I mean, but that's just generally like the first thing I think of when I hear the word retaliation. I think of defense, but I mean, once it gets past that first thought, um, really to me, it kind of burns down to a vengeance. Someone did something to you or someone you care about, and you're going to retaliate against that in a not so good way, such as I would say probably back in the old days, murder. Committing. I wouldn't say just committing a crime, but going above and beyond um, with some things that really should be.
Okay. Well, the next layer of this and the next really big question that I wanted to ask is, do you feel that retaliation is justified all of the time, none of the time, or there's certain circumstances?
There's definitely certain circumstances. I'd say it can be about 50-50.
Okay. Well, let me kind of walk you through what I was thinking about earlier and the whole topic surrounding this. What I had thought through where there's two different types of retaliation, and you can normally formulate retaliation as somebody broke a rule against you and you have now justified retaliation by either breaking that same rule back on them, or you are taking a different approach to retaliate. However, you are answering by taking some sort of measure to either correct or to get back, or, as you said, defend yourself, vengeance. And then there are people that retaliate out of they had broken a rule, or they had done something wrong, and then somebody called the powers to enforce whatever they did wrong, to enforce that punishment, to notify them of, this is so. Let me, instead of trying to explain this, I can actually give an example, right? So if you've ever worked in an office in your life, anybody, you've received the sexual harassment training, and they
yeah.
explicitly talk about how retaliation through, you sexually harass a coworker goes, absolutely not. Hey, my day's going good, man. Nice to see you. I missed you for World of Darkness yesterday, man. Sorry. Anyway, back to my thought. In sexual harassment, somebody reports you for sexually harassing somebody, and you retaliate by either treating them negatively again, or you treat them to some other harsher form of harassment that isn't necessarily sexual. It could be physical, so on and so forth. So, in my mind, I feel, and this is just me personally, I'm not going to ever stand here and say violence is the answer to everything, or even to anything, really. I myself try to practice as much pacifism as I can. However, violence begets violence 9 times out of 10. If you choose to be violent with somebody, chances are they're going to retaliate with violence, because it's in our nature. We're not going to let somebody beat the shit out of us and you not answer. And that's a form of retaliation, and I'm all about that, right? If somebody pulls a knife on me, I'm going to beat the shit out of him so he doesn't kill me or anyone else around me, right? But there is a form of retaliation that I cannot stand, and it is when you do something wrong, you break a rule, and somebody comes to enforce that rule, either through punishment or something, and you retaliate against the person that reported you. And that form of retaliation is absolutely unjustified. I don't care who you are. There's absolutely no justifying that. You cannot come back from a place that you have broken a rule, you've done something that everybody has collectively agreed to do, and you did the opposite of. And then you retaliate on them, as in you try to draw blood from them for keeping that order. It's just, there's no point to it. There's absolutely, you're the worst person in the world. That's my take for that.
I 100% agree with your whole entire statement right there. Within any circumstance, if you're doing something where you shouldn't be doing, it's not allowed, there are rules against it, and there are consequences and disciplinary, whatever the word is, I can't think right now, actions against it. When you get caught in that and you dig your hole even deeper, you are getting to the lowest of the low. And in my personal opinion, there's only a few other people who can get lower, and it takes a lot to do that as well. But it's just one of those things where no matter what, it's wrong. To me, my opinion, 10 times out of 10, it's wrong, and there should be probably even further. Your laws may differ, but I know here in the United States, by the law, some states will say if they get onto your property, you have a right to defend yourself. Other places, like I know, such as New York, they would like you to call the police.
Yeah,
Further steps with it.
yeah, I was going to say the police are the main enforcers of that, but New York also has a stand your ground law to an extent. It's a little bit more specific than most other states, but If somebody forcefully enters your home and they're facing you, you can defend your property, you can defend your home. However, if their back is turned to you, you cannot use deadly force. I don't know how it works with like the regular stand your ground law. I'm pretty sure it's if you're on the property and you were asked to leave and you didn't, you can use deadly force to protect your property. So, but I mean, with all of that being said, at this point, right, we've discussed retaliation in both forms, but if one way is better than the other, why should all of it be okay or should none of it be okay?
Could you elaborate on that a little bit more for me?
So, retaliation as an idea is you've been taught from the time that you were in elementary school till now you shouldn't retaliate, right? If somebody hits you, you go tell the teacher and then they handle it, right? Retaliation, if somebody punches you on the street and you punch them back, you also can be charged with assault depending on how things work out. So in reality, we have a society set up where there is absolutely no retaliation. Retaliation is not rewarded in any sense as a lawful society. But what I think is really interesting, right, and we'll get back to the question of should it be that way, but what I think is interesting is most people can agree that one form of retaliation is much better than the other. And I happen to be a part of that majority that agrees that if somebody hits you, you hit them back. I personally believe eye for an eye works in most situations like that. Because it goes back to the golden rule. Do you know what the golden rule is?
Treat others that you would want to be treated.
Yeah.
Expect to be treated.
Yep. Do to others as you'd have done to yourself. So if I walk up to somebody and slap them in the back of the head, I'm telling that person I want to be slapped in the back of the head. Or maybe the front, right, depending on, like how things are. But this is, as a society, as just humans, right? You see it within every culture of humans. That if a violent action happens, violence is met, and if not escalated to another point. There's only a few times in human history where a violent thing has happened and they backed off, but it kind of as like a whole cultural, racial, that all gets thrown out the window. Human beings are violent creatures that will retaliate because they don't want to. Yeah, and I'm so sorry about that. Our stream went down here for a little bit. I'm glad we're back up and running, but yeah, back to the point at hand. The main question that I did want to ask and get like a really concrete answer from you, right? We've went over people that do illegal actions,
right,
and retaliate after having the rules that they were breaking enforced and some sort of discipline happens. And then you have the other side of retaliation where somebody breaks a rule on you and you skip the step of having somebody else enforce the rule, you do it yourself. If we accept as just creatures, not necessarily socially or within our society, should we accept all forms of retaliation if we're willing to accept half of the package? Or should we actually fully embrace that no retaliation is good retaliation? Everything should be handled by the general population. And I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If somebody punches you in the face, you're calling the police to then have them apprehended and then tried for assault, which is judgment through your peers. So really what it comes down to in the real world sense, when you break a rule, you are then judged by the general population to see if you were guilty of that crime. And that's really, it begs the question, should we release people that retaliated against somebody that did it to them first? But at the same time, if we acknowledge that, then we would acknowledge the other half where somebody broke a rule, had it enforced, and then as soon as they served that time or did that punishment, they went back and were 10 times worse. On paper, it sounds like you shouldn't, that it's not even the same. You can't equate them, but it's the same action. It's just inversed. So how do you feel?
Ooh, again, tricky on me, really deep. So I'm iffy on it, to be honest with you. So there are certain aspects, I believe, where a single individual should be able to take a retaliation if, for like the example, if I'm walking down the street, someone comes up and hits me, or even anybody, if like someone were to hit somebody else, they should 100% have that retaliation to beat the living snot out of them. Now, when it comes to should like all retaliation be considered bad, no, absolutely not. There definitely is 100% a good and bad, and that's going to always be taken into consideration, and people are still going to do both. So, for me, give me a second here.
Well, let me kind of fill in the blanks here, and you can absolutely tell me if I'm right or not. But
Right.
the general sense that I'm getting from what you're saying is you believe as a society we should carry out our own justices. So we might be the sole witness to a crime, but we should be able to dole out that punishment in retaliation. Specifically, if you were a victim of that, if you were the victim, you were the only witness there. You had somebody punched you in an alleyway. Nobody else saw it, not a single person, and you carry out that punishment then, which would just be an escalation or a match of what they did to you.
And within certain circumstances and situations, yes.
Well, okay. Well, hang on. Don't backpedal. Don't backpedal. Because I agree. I agree with that statement that that form of retaliation should be allowed because you run the risk of somebody punching you in the face, and then you go to trial. The person that got punched in the face goes through all the right channels. They called the cops, waited for the cops. The other person waited. He gets arrested. You testify against him, and his lawyer outsmarts your lawyer, and he walks free to punch another person in the face.
Right.
And
So
nobody wins in that scenario, not even the person that punched somebody else in the face, because as humans, he's probably going to try to get away with more and more and more, and he's going to eventually take a life and realize that he didn't want to take a life, and now he's serving life in prison. That's obviously like a huge escalation, but you've seen it time and time again where somebody's countlessly getting in trouble with assault, and then eventually it leads to homicide, and they go, oh no, I did not want this to happen. But I agree that a lot of people's time would be saved if we were legally allowed to retaliate against just basic little things that, in the eyes of the law, I want my law enforcement to chase people that are a legitimate danger to society, not Joe that's having a bad day and I stepped on his toe and he fucking rocked me. I want to be able to rock him back. And, like say just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean you get to fucking punch people. It's like that I feel like would make society better, but it would beg the question like, okay, so if we're okay with this retaliation, then somebody else can feel justified being slighted because they broke a rule and somebody tattled on them. Right? Because I feel like one form of retaliation you You can't justify one side without negating the other.
Right. No matter what, they're always going to be toe and toe together, no matter what. The neck and neck. When there's one, there's always the other.
And right, this is the whole Punisher argument, right? Like
Right.
we don't want vigilantes because they become the very thing that they fight. And a lot of people view that we need people like that to enforce the laws because you hear the monologues from all of these anti-hero kind of characters that are like, you're the goody two shoes that beats them half to death, and then they get thrown in jail, and years go by, they get out, and then they just go right back at it again. And when the anti-hero apprehends a criminal, he shoots him in the head, and it's done, it's over with. It never happens anymore. And that's, in my mind, that's a form of retaliation. The retaliation's being carried out. Yeah, he's retaliating against somebody else's actions, even though it might not have personally affected that entity. He's still retaliating on behalf of somebody else. And that's, again, he's still murdering people. So he's still breaking that rule because somebody else broke that rule initially. You shouldn't murder people, whether it's good or bad. And to this day, I know one of my biggest weaknesses is that if somebody got that violent with any of my loved ones, that I would match that energy and escalate it way too far. But I also feel that I would, before any actions happened, I would call the police and let them know what I'm going to do, and then go carry out the action and serve my sentence. There's not going to be any bullshit, red tape, anything. I'm going to confess to everything right off the bat. I don't care what hole they put me in. I believe in justice for all, and I'm not capable of being the Punisher because I don't believe that he should walk away as much as he has. You root for him too when you're watching, but that's him. I would feel guilty of not serving a crime or serving the time for the crime that somebody else didn't get to serve for. Because at the end of the day, I'm robbing that person at a chance of rehabilitation. Because in my fleeting thoughts, there is no redemption for murdering any person in my family, and that's very personal. And I'm sure there's many people that sympathize with me, but I know it's a flaw because you are robbing that chance of that person to be rehabilitated. And again, because it's so personal and because you've been robbed of so much, you feel justified doing whatever you want in retaliation. But at the end of the day, you become just like that person. That person had to be loved by somebody. And you can say, because he's a murderer that nobody loved him. I guarantee his mom still loved him. His mom got to see a side that none of us got to see. And there's a shot at redemption there somewhere, even if it's buried beneath life of crime, history of violence, whatever. There's still a path to redemption in everybody, because I sincerely believe that every human being on this planet wants to see other people thrive. It's just because they feel like they are so far behind the eight ball that people just don't understand them. So it's buried way underneath all of these mental issues, physical issues, monetary issues. The weight of the world falls on people's shoulders, and they make one really terrible mistake, and then they double down because it's the only thing that's now solid in their life. And then it collides with somebody that you can't let the justice system do their job. They have to retaliate. And, it's a never-ending cycle. And that's the initial thing that I had said about retaliation, especially with physical violence. violence begets violence.
Right.
And on the road, on the path of revenge, you should always dig two graves. And it's because when you buy into the idea of revenge, retaliation, all of this, you are ending yourself as well. And it doesn't
Oh
matter
yeah.
if you're retaliating against people in a workplace. It doesn't matter if you're retaliating against law enforcement. It doesn't matter. You are destroying a piece of yourself when you choose to retaliate. And it's not for any other reason other than you are becoming the thing that you're retaliating against. You become the very thing that you are upset with enough to let the darkness take hold, to let it make you into this monster. It's that powerful, and you know that it's bad, but you turn into it to do it. And that is why I believe that how we have it set up, retaliation is just bad in all regards, is absolutely the best thing for society. However, I do believe that you can take that with a grain of salt. And again, in really drastic measures, really drastic, like violent things, murder, rape, all of that, absolutely do not retaliate because you will go down a path that there is no coming back from. But if Joe Schmo smacks you in the back of the head because he's having a bad day, smack him in the head back. That's how I feel about retaliation.
Right. I feel it's a double-edged sword. No matter what, there's going to be points where it's like, okay, like as you said, someone's having a bad day, you get smacked in the back of the head, and then there's the points where you are talking about where it's, someone's getting murdered or raped, and your initial thoughts whenever you hear about this, and especially if it's someone like a loved one, is I'm going to go find this person, and then you're going to possibly even go and commit those same exact acts. So yes, you're going to permanently destroy something of yourself and a piece of you that at first you may not even realize is gone. It may happen later in the road, so to say, when you start a family. So I mean, right? So yeah, how we have the whole "do not retaliate," at least within the United States. Yes, I do agree. It should.
Well, and again, I don't want to just I mean retaliation in general. You know,
Right.
take away whatever geographic location you have in mind, whatever culture you have in mind, whatever specific group of people that you have in mind. The idea of retaliation is bad because as you and I have both said it millions of times, but it never ends well. It never goes the way that people think that it's going to go. And it's a very harsh and sad truth that that's what happens.
Yeah, it honestly is, and you picked a pretty darn good topic, I must say. So, um, but yeah, so I mean, no matter what the situation, you're not gonna want someone to retaliate, and vice versa. There's gonna be some situations you yourself you're not gonna want to retaliate, or if you do something, you're gonna hope someone doesn't retaliate against you.
Right.
Um, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was agreeing. I was saying right.
Right. So I mean, when it comes to the whole idea of retaliation, yes, um, some circumstances definitely retaliate. But then it also, as we have said numerous times already during this, you, if you retaliate, sometimes no matter what the circumstances, whether it's not if someone smacked you in the back of the head or someone murdered a loved one, you're still going to go back and do the same thing you are getting upset about. The, the whole idea of retaliation. you're going to go and become what you're retaliating against.
Exactly.
So,
And that's my biggest thing, is that you become the very thing that you are protesting against, right? The one thing that you're upset about happening, you're becoming. And that's where I feel like a lot of people get lost on that fact, because justification is like a super powerful thing. Justification, it could be another podcast topic, but to touch on it, just touch on it in relation to how we're talking about it right now. Retaliation is one of those things that leads to other people feeling justified in what they're doing. And when that happens, they feel justified in absolutely matching, or, you know, doing doing God's work, right? You hear that all the time, where somebody talks about the Punisher and they go, "Oh, he's just doing God's work." You know, he's cutting the red tape of the justice system, or he's cutting the red tape of, you know, whatever democratic republic, socialist, you know, like execution by the royal thing here. My biggest pet peeve when dealing with what we're dealing with here is that a lot of people just blatantly ignore the fact that they are essentially becoming the same evil that they are wishing to put an end to. And to me, it's ridiculous that we have to have this conversation anyway.
right, it's an endless loop that generally, no matter what anyone tries to do, I'm sure one day there will become a time, whether or not it's a short period of time or an everlasting period of time. But I'm sure there will be one day, one period of time, where there will be actual peace. Because with peace, you don't have to worry about retaliation, vengeance, justice. Everyone will be doing as as every other person will be. So it'll
You
come to a point in time where
you genuinely believe that, or are you like holding out hope that that happens?
I genuinely believe there will come a time where this world will see peace, where every country will is united as one. Every continent is not trying to wage war, but instead trying to come together, to join as one. You don't have to unify. You don't have to have the same culture, the same religion, or legal law or law system, anything like that. I look at it as to me, one day there will be a time where everyone can walk down the street and not have to worry about anything. You don't have to lock your doors at night. You can sleep peacefully knowing no one's going to harm you.
The one thing I'll say to that is I believe that you're putting a lot of faith in things that you can't control.
You're absolutely right.
And just the
You can't
fact,
control society.
no. You can control society. That's been proven. You can control society. What you can't control is individuals, and you can't control how individuals take news, right? So
Right.
actually, the COVID vaccine was the strangest development for me, right? Because it was kind of a very brief moment in human history where not just a small majority of people said that this was not safe and not okay. It was actually a pretty good majority of people. it almost like tore the country in half with how equal it was of people that felt like it was bad. And
I believe it did.
yeah, and in that case, nobody could have predicted that. And there's no planning for that. Society had to essentially make a choice of are we doing this? Are we going to continue trying to, the way that I look at it, right? There's two scenarios in my mind, right? The first scenario is likely what was going on. You have all of these healthcare people that did something that humans have never seen in their lifetime, and we advanced a lot medically out of necessity because of COVID. COVID was one of those like really big things that humans just were not prepared for and couldn't handle. But that's the thing, is that it's never happened in human history. In obviously the brief history of vaccines with humans in healthcare, vaccines have always taken a very, very long time to produce, like an enormous amount of time, because there's a lot of testing. There's a lot of side effects because you are putting a copy of a dead cell into
your body.
Yeah.
In yourself. I mean.
Yeah. So it's risky business if you were to tell foreign entities how our immune system works, I guarantee you all of them would be like, huh? That's how that works? That seems really risky. And it goes to show what humans are capable of for adaptability, But the biggest question that I've always had was, why is the individual on the individual level, and this goes for like both sides of the aisle as well, right and left. Nobody trusts their government, yet when you ask them who they voted for on the Congress level, they tell you, "Oh, I don't care about Congress. I care about the president." And I feel like that's one of the biggest misdirections, and why I feel like our government is mistrusting, is that nobody, like, you see it on TikTok all the time, people that are aware of how our system works, they go, if you want laws changed, like if you want better laws, or if you want these laws to be rewritten better or changed for what's right, the president has no power over that.
Right.
That's not the president's job.
It's the Congress.
Yeah. And if you're voting in the way of trying to find a good person to invoke checks and balances, you're even looking at the wrong stat there as well. Hang on. So my friend here, Young Bai, has said something really quick, and I would like to read it out loud for you so you can have a chance to answer as well. But he says, I agree with what you're saying. World wasn't prepared for that, and you can never expect the world to come into agreement on how to handle the problem due to how the view of the world and how they solve problems. Brazil is an example of no one trusting their government to do anything with how shady they get. That's actually a really good point. And I think Brazil, let me double check this really quick. I think Brazil was one of the countries that got hit really hard with COVID too.
I do believe it was.
And I mean, they have like really insane laws that would absolutely throw our everyday citizens into a frenzy. One of the laws is mandatory service, which is just nutty. All right, so I want to look. Okay, so in total, they have had 33.5 million cases, and they had 676,000 deaths. Wow. So I don't know exactly where they rank.
I'm not I'm not quite too sure with that either because I know there are certain places where they 100% shut down and like they still don't have it.
Yeah.
And then there's other places who just that didn't really care too much. Like, okay, well, we're gonna let our people still continue to go and do what they're doing, and then they got hit really bad.
Well, actually, no. So Brazil currently, right now, is actually they have less cases than America, and they have less deaths. The margin is pretty slim with deaths, but for cases, we have legitimately a million more than them, a little over a million more. Uh, oh, actually, in total, that was just the last 14 days. Actually, uh,
Oh,
yeah, in total, the numbers are not even close. We are definitely, we've done the worst, I can say. France had a lot of people infected, but not a lot of people die.
right. Well, I mean, if you look how America itself, the United States, reacted to COVID-19, the coronavirus, everything basically crashed to an
Not
extent.
basically. Not no.
Right. It did.
No, the extent was massive worldwide.
Right. But when it comes to like the United States alone, yes, everyone was called to quarantine, stay inside. After how bad it was, after the fact that millions had already died and new cases were overflowing every single day. Like, let me put it like this: one time, I had to take my son to the emergency room. This was recently. This was in New York. Um, he had broken out in hives all over his stomach, and I didn't know what it was, so I took him to the emergency room. And the amount of time that we had to wait because of the sheer amount of COVID patients, we had to sit in a hallway. That was our room, was a hallway, and severely understaffed.
Yeah.
COVID-19 took a toll on everything, absolutely. And I don't know. I do believe the United States at some point in time will recover, but not anytime soon. We're going completely off topic of retaliation.
Well, I was actually going to rope it back in, right? So, with everything that we had just said, right? At this point, when do you think when do you think the American people should take justice into their hands now? Uh, Interestingly enough, Young Bai has actually commented again, and he had said, "Government looked for financial gain with false promises to its people." Not saying that wasn't the end goal, and other governments, including our own, but that's a whole other subject. I personally believe things that happen are done on purpose with opportunity for them to gain off of it while promoting it as an accident or an attack from another country. In reality, most is planned and etc. That's just his opinion, though. And I'm going to actually add on to that with
I agree with that
Well, I'm going to add on to it, and I'm going to say I don't think a lot of that is anything other than honestly like right place, right time. Here's why I think that though. Is I definitely have a reason for it. The biggest issue that a lot of people that are mistrusting in the government feel is that their government is lying to them on a constant basis, right?
Right.
But when you live in a society like that, where you feel very strongly and very passionately that your government is lying to you constantly, it's very easy to mistake a genuine action as a flawed attempt to harm you because you're living in this constant state of
Denial, almost.
well, not denial, because it's not denial. It would be denial if they came out and said we're absolutely corrupt, we're evil, and everyone went, oh, so you guys are good, awesome. That would be denial. But it's not denial. It's something different. It's paranoia to the extent that you can't believe, or you can't let yourself believe that there might be a possibility that there was a genuine attempt at doing the right thing that went horribly wrong. And again, I'm one of those people that I just feel like with all of the changes that are being made and all of the things happening in our current socio-political environment right now, that there's absolutely no good happening, and it's manufactured. It seems almost too perfect for it not to be, right? Because if you think about like a strategic attack, what's the first thing that you want to do when you're invading a country is to disrupt and harm the infrastructure there and the economy. And both of those things happened.
Question.
Yeah. Well, both of those things happened from 2021 till I think currently. Like all of these things are going wrong, and not a lot of people. A lot of people are like too distracted with trying to live to really like put a lot of thought in it and say like, hey, I think this could have been a manufactured attack, and by whatever entity. Maybe it is another country, maybe it is our government, whatever, but I think it some sort of action needs to be taken, and here is where we kind of get back on track here with retaliation. When you seek to quote unquote retaliate against anybody or anything, typically you feel comfortable retaliating when you have unequivocal evidence. You know 1,400% that they have done something wrong, and you are going to serve your own brand of justice.
Right.
However, you cannot unequivocally 1,000% be sure who's responsible for your mishaps and your misfortune right this very second. Unless it's you. Like,
Right.
unless you are personally responsible for it, you can't point fingers accurately enough to really feel comfortable justifying it. Again, I'm speaking from my own like experience. The things that happen to me, I can't exactly point a finger at because I don't know who would be responsible for something like that. I have ideas, and I have the really big idea is that kind of the way that the world is right now shaping up, it seems that our government has ill intentions. But that's really all I have, is that it seems like my
Right.
government has ill intentions.
Because unless we really, again, if you like retaliate, you possibly infiltrate your government system, which is going to be really difficult to do itself. We're not going to have the solid proof to bring justification to our actions. So,
Well, I
no matter
mean,
what,
above that as well, we've already had people infiltrate our government,
right?
and now they're labeled as domestic terrorists.
Yeah, that is
So,
also true.
so like, they retaliated in their own way, and they did not have the support that they thought they did.
Right, and then they did not get the outcome that they wished.
No, because I mean, one of the worst things that you could be branded in this country's justice system is a terrorist,
Right.
and their futures are ruined completely. There's no
No
coming
matter
back
where
from that.
they go.
Yeah, there's no coming back from that. So that's really my point about retaliation as a whole, not just even as an idea anymore, just as a whole. Is it's really easy to say it makes sense to pull the trigger right now, but you and the person that has done the action against you are the only ones that know the truth.
Right.
And unfortunately, in the society that we live in, you two are not going to be the only ones that will be involved with the incident anymore. So that's really where it comes down to begging the question, is retaliation ever a good idea? Because when you break down on every level, it when you break it down on every level, you have to take into account that you are no longer going to be just with this person involved with that action. Once you take that step of retaliation, you're involving people above you. But Young Bai has another comment here. On the surface level, things get taken taken care of somewhat, but unless you're looking down from the outside, you truly won't understand what's going on. That goes for everything too, like gas now and disasters and war, everything. That's also a super valid point, is that we don't have any information from what's happening on the inside of really anything right now. Gas prices, I mean, even going back to the what kind of sparked this whole thing with vaccines, even. There's a great deal many of people that thought that the vaccines were sped out, pumped out into the system to do a whole array of things that, if we're all being honest with ourselves, don't make any sense. But at the same time, they're asking almost out of desperation to take said vaccine right now, even though prior all of our vaccines were tested for at least 5 years for long-term effects, and it seemed like, yeah, and we know as much as we're allowed to. Everything else gets hidden, but that's the underlying point that I'm trying to make here with retaliation at all, in all forms and everything. You know frighteningly little about what you do day to day, and that's for no other reason other than someone has deemed you unfit for that knowledge. Whether that actually be the case or not, it stands to question, but the point that I'm trying to make is that you right now as a person have every right to all the information, period. However, a lot of people don't share that sentiment with me. I believe as a human being that you have the right to know every little detail about every little thing that will affect your life directly, because the one thing that all of us humans are scared of are the things that we don't know about. And not having all of the information, especially about something as like closely related to our health as a vaccine is scary, right? It's a foreign substance that's being put into your body that we know is going to end up being something that is going to be harmful to us in the long run. Actually, not even the long run. It could be short term. We don't know, and that's the problem. That's what scares a lot of people, is they have absolutely no idea what they're putting in their body. And again, a little research might put your mind at ease. Uh, it, but there's always this mistrust that you're going to have. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but this is why it makes it very hard to justify retaliation against your government, because this could be a whole cruel ploy to control you. This could be a terrible thing that's happening to you in hopes that you keel over and die at some point in the very near future. Or this could be a very genuine attempt to protect their citizens, and their citizens are pushing back on it because throughout history, governments that rush things and try to get everything out are manipulative.
Now, see, if we go into like personal opinions when it comes to the vaccine itself, I will say I am not a vaccinated person.
Okay.
I refuse to actually get the vaccination, and I do have personal like reasons for that. And if you'd like, I will dive into that. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I will table that for another day.
Okay, but personally, I feel the reason why it was rushed so much was, and they skipped all of the trial and error, was because the government was genuinely frightened for their citizens. They were wanting to give something that could help, and then obviously throughout the little bit of testing they did, a lot of negative occurrence negative feedback has came back from it, and that kind of multiplied through the time that it's been here.
Okay, so you believe that well, hang on. Actually, we're going to back up just a little bit on the point that I was making before about everybody has a right to know every piece of information for the good of society. Young Bai had a comment about that and said, I agree with your comment. However, I do believe that there are many people that shouldn't know that. Not everybody is stable enough to handle sensitive info, and how we handle the social platforms are now and how kids follow it leads to disaster. Again, I'm gonna double down on the fact that I believe that everybody has a right to know, right? I'm doubling down on that fact just solely based off of how I interpret information and how I process it. Now, I understand that there are people that can't process said information the same way that I can and try to boil it down logically, what it would mean in a practical sense, what it means for me now, so on and so forth. I understand that I am in the minority of understanding things and processing the information, no matter how detrimental it is, so on and so forth. However, I think hiding that information, because you as a person might understand that other people don't react well, but how would you feel if somebody told you that they withheld a lot of information that could have potentially maybe saved the life of a loved one of yours, or could have saved you from some terrible hardship, but they withheld it because they believed that you were unable to handle that properly? I would take that as super disrespectful and immediately would distrust a lot of things being told to me now by that entity. again, that's me personally, and I can. I mean, in all honesty, that's all I can really. I can only really talk about is how I would feel personally about it. But I digress. My overall point is that it's really hard to make that judgment call on a government level, right? Like at a societal level, your ability to interpret and actually manage and use information is really hard to micromanage. So you have to make a lot of generalizations in order to make it work. And if the general public will take that information and absolutely falter with it because they become nihilistic or, whatever the outcome might be, the overarching problem is that I feel personally that you are creating a bigger issue by telling people that they can't handle the truth. And that's essentially what it comes down to. When you're withholding information because you're afraid of how they're going to take it, you're afraid that your general population can't handle the truth. And no matter how valid it might be, you still have to take into consideration that you have to tell people, you have to tell your general population that we're not going to tell you the whole story because I don't trust that you're going to take it well. And I feel like that's just not a good hill to die on. That's not a good look. It's not a good look for anyone. And it's unfortunate because it is true. It's absolutely something that we deal with on a constant basis. And yeah,
Well said.
but,
Very well said.
well, thank you. But there's a flip side to that as well. And actually, Young Bai, you point out a really good point. It's only due to the processing of information and how others interpret that and call to action on it. So this actually goes back to something that we were talking about earlier, that you can control society, but you can't control individuals. And this is really harping on that fact of you can take a event that happened, and you can have, we'll be generous and say 4 different points of view. In reality, what's going to happen with those 4 different points of view is you're going to have 4 different stories, and you're going to feel like at least 3 of them are lying, if not all of them are lying about it, because they're just so vastly different. Makes no sense. Why did you say that when this person said this? There's no way that could have happened due to this person's account, yada, yada. So I can sit here and make the claim that everybody deserves a right to know, and I still feel justified in that. But at the same time, when you have anomalies like we have, where people can look at something happening and absolutely just not have the same outcomes, it's hard to manage. And I don't envy anybody that has to make that call to say, the general public can't handle this information, so we're going to have to withhold it from them. I don't envy anybody that's going to make that choice, because that's an impossible choice. It's just it's not feasible in my mind to have anybody try to make that choice of, hey, letting people know about this could possibly save a lot of lives with their own personal decisions, or somebody's going to rant about it on YouTube and absolutely fuck up our whole world here because they took it completely out of context, or they took it the wrong way, or so on, the whatever, insert excuse here. But the point is that absolutely does happen. I'm not going to pretend that people were justifying like murdering women in the streets because of the Roe v. Wade turnover. Like, obviously people interpreted that rule going away in a lot of ways that I don't think were practical. But again, it harbors back to justification for certain actions, whether you consider it retaliation or not, it's I guess it just begs the question of, what are you going to do to help that situation, and are you going to be able to sleep at night doing it? But I digress. With information, the way that it's spread nowadays and the way that it's interpreted, I have to agree that people don't handle information properly anymore. I feel like a lot of people now are under the guise of, if I make a really horrible take, I'm going to get famous on TikTok because, I'm going to have all of these huge content creators call me out. I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just saying bullshit right now. But I'm going to spew it as loud as I can so people will call me out and people will come look at my channel and I become famous. Young Bai has said another thing. At this point, Young Bai, I'm just going to ask you to come on the show. Like right now. At this point.
I was actually going to say, I was going to ask you the same thing because I did read his comment and he has been giving good feedback,
Yeah.
So like, there's me. I'm jumping all over the place, and I do sincerely apologize about that.
I don't care. I enjoy it because here we are talking about this. I guess this would be a different level of, the original topic of retaliation, but I'm kind of enjoying where this discussion's going. But
right, but we can also tie this in with retaliation.
Well, that was kind of what I was getting at was,
Right.
let's say in this world right now, what had happened is we had another Edward Snowden, and somebody leaked all of the files, and we do learn, in fact, that not just a little, not just a little detail of COVID or a little detail of a little bit of everything was withheld, but a vast majority of it. As a matter of fact, it seems now that we only know of it. We don't know anything about it. We thought we knew a lot about it and a lot of speculations about it, but just on the sheer amount of data that was withheld from us as a general public came out, right? It was leaked. The general public knows now everything that was happening, and we know, how either A, safe it was and how poorly it was handled by healthcare, B, how deadly it was and how well the world's healthcare system handled it. Whatever the outcomes may be, we find out that our government was, in fact, absolutely lying to us, right?
Now, is this something that actually happened? Like something got leaked?
No. This is a hypothetical. This is my thought experiment on retaliation.
Okay.
Would the people of America specifically, I'm getting a little more specific now with geographic location. I know I had cautioned against that earlier, but I guess we're going to fully embrace it here. But would the general population of America then be justified in retaliating after learning this super harsh truth? Do you think that another revolution would be the answer to that problem and a form of retaliation, in fact?
Another revolution, to be honest with you, in my opinion, no. Because it's going to really bring a bigger split in the U.S. than there already is. Like, we already have, if we look at this politically wise, we have two different political parties. We have the left and we have the right.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, going through and basically revolting, having almost basically another civil war.
Well, it would technically be a revolution by definition, just
Right.
because it's against a government entity, not a part of the country seceding from the other part. But I get your point.
Right. So I feel like it's going to create a bigger divide than what there needs to be. Yes, there is a potential chance that divide could unify the United States.
Well,
but there's also the really big off chance that it doesn't.
Well, now I'm curious, just for your point of view in general, do you believe that that shocking of news, that much information being withheld wouldn't unify the country? What if it, all right, let me change this thought experiment up. Not only was a lot of medical information withheld, but what if plans for actually separating us, let's just say conspiracy theories, wet dream, data's leaked that everything that they thought was a conspiracy is a conspiracy. Would you feel then it would be justified? And if we could guarantee that there would be an absolute, complete, everybody, right, left, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, said, oh, we're all on the same team here and it's against them, would you feel justified then in that retaliation?
To yes, and in a sense. So like yeah, like all that information, 100% definitely, I could see there'd be justification for the people to revolt and start a revolution. And but my thing is to where the point, if they go to overthrow the current government system we have, everything could possibly crumble, and it's going to be another restart. So no, I can't really. I don't know if this is a decent example, but think of it when America was still just the colonies. You know, still under rule of Britain and the British government, and they revolted against. And so I mean, yes, they took bits and pieces from their past control, or well, I don't know if you can say control, but system, and turned it into something else. So more or less, to sum up, what I gotta say is, yeah, it would be, it would, in those circumstances, I believe it would be justified, but I would be frightened of the outcome.
I absolutely. You have every right to be fearful, but at the same time, well, now I'm trying to figure out how to approach this now, right? Because now we're branching into another.
A whole.
Well, yeah,
topic.
because a whole other shtick here. Because here's the thing: you have every right to be fearful, because it would be, chances are, it would be a violent revolution. It would be a physical overthrowing at that point in this hypothetical, because you found out that the government was harboring ill intentions and absolutely were trying to control you through whatever means they were trying to control you with. So like this scenario becomes very scary, because now they held the power for that long and they were planning on doing this behind your back. Now that they don't have to hide it, what measures are they going to take now, so on and so forth. It's a scary thing to think about. But that's not the question. The question is, would it be justified at that point? So I'll go ahead and answer with this. Yes, it would be justified at that point. Only because only because it's no longer a societal thing. We're going to go with the way that our justice system is supposed to be set up now, is its judgment through peers. So when your peers at this point are all in agreement that, this is bad and we need to stop the bad thing from happening, that's when I feel like absolutely we're justified in a very harsh measure. So, with that being said, that would be a completely different form of retaliation, almost out of necessity, right? So let's say that all of our greatest fears.
Sorry, you cut off a little bit. Could you repeat that a bit right before?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. the point that I'm like kind of stumbling around right now is when you have a whole society believing or knowing to be true a certain subset of truths that were directly linked or are about to be directly linked to mass harm, I sincerely believe that everybody has the right to retaliate for their own safety at that point. And I think that that's absolutely like one of the only possibilities that you should have in that instance.
Right.
So, with all of that being said, all of this being tied in, wrapped up neatly in a bow, I think retaliation. Well, actually, hang on. Before we wrap this in a bow, this actually just occurred to me, right?
That Davey is in the chat.
Oh, is it? I haven't seen him comment.
He's not speaking, but he is watching and listening.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, Davey. I just had a thought that might kind of poke a lot of holes in my initial theory, but absolutely, our justice system is a form of retaliation.
Yeah.
We don't look at it that way because collectively as a society, we have all agreed that that was the best form of retaliation.
Right, and it all starts with kind of a little bit what I already said when the colonies broke off from the British control.
Well,
We
what I
retaliated against.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no, you're okay. What I was getting at was as a society, like as humans, we've all decided that we're not just taking justice for one person, we're taking justice for everything. You know, everybody is coming together to say this is the form of justice that we think we deserve, or that this person deserves. And it's a judgment among peers. It's, you know, yada yada. But I believe wholeheartedly that is a form of retaliation that is justified. And I think it's actually the best form that we could probably come up with. But it's a way to keep people from doing terrible things. And then people, as history's proven with the way the West was, the way that we were bounty hunting for people, live or dead, you know, we knew that wasn't going to last long. That's not a good system. And so, I mean, with that being said, having people judge other peers in the court of law is a form of retaliation, but it's much better than letting your average everyday citizen have to carry out their own justice and become the very thing that they're upset with.
Well said.
So I guess to that avail, or to that point, I can absolutely wrap this up in a pretty bow now and say we live in a world where one side of justification of retaliation is viewed as wrong and is actually punishable because of how wrong it is. And we live in a society where a great deal, many of people will feel justified in retaliating for themselves if the rule is broken against them. If they're not the initial ones that broke the rule and are retaliating, they feel justified in their retaliation because the other person broke the rule and they're just enforcing that rule themselves. They're cutting the tape, as it were. And I agree.
Yeah. I'm not as smart as I seem, but so there are a lot of things that will confuse me in it, like just today in this topic, but Yeah, I can definitely say I do agree.
Well, good. That's a good start. Uh, but uh, all in all, I think from this discussion, my my good takeaways here is actually coming to the realization that we have retaliation ingrained into our society, but don't recognize it as we don't recognize it as the true form of retaliation. We we recognize it as our justice system, and anybody that enforces the law at this point or enforces the rules of which people break, anybody who does enforce that is absolutely retaliating. And I think that we've come up with a very good gauge to understand how much is too far, how much isn't far enough, so on and so forth. So, with all of that being said, I wholeheartedly believe that we have actually come up with a very good system. And again, the system itself that's in place is flawed genuinely to its core because you have people that take advantage of it. But when you really get down and think about exactly what our system could be or what it once was, or however, when you don't have people gaming it or using it as a weapon against minorities or just anybody in general, this is where we get into the territory of, I feel that we can probably get away with saying that it's no longer a form of retaliation. It's the next step in finding that peaceful place that you had said that you believe that we could be at, because that would be peace on earth, right? If somebody breaks a rule or a law, justice is served instantly, but not violently. Even if the crime was violent, everybody collectively goes, okay, now we can take the steps to figure out why he did this, why she did this, why they did this, and we can take the steps to make it right. And we can do right by them, because obviously somewhere down the road we failed. And that will be the only shot at peace that we have as creatures of this earth, as just bystanders on this flying rock through space. That's the only shot that we have of living in a world that will actually bring people to a higher understanding of what it means to be human. And I mean, that's really what this whole topic is honestly about, is what it means to be human. And a lot of people don't understand that you as a human have your certain unalienable rights. However, your rights don't trump the rights of other people. And we see this a lot with Karens. Now stay with me here, because I do have a point with this, but we see this a lot with Karens, that you have somebody that wholeheartedly believes that they were wronged, and somebody has to pay. And all of us to our core know that nobody should pay for someone else's rights being quote unquote trumped, when in reality I think a good majority of us go, yeah, you weren't really trumped, but whatever. But at the same time, you have to understand that retaliation shows its face in many ways. Like we've just discussed, law enforcement is a form of retaliation. And having somebody trump your rights leads you to justifying retaliations in like really ugly ways. And it's up to us as a society to recognize when it's justified. And that's really why I believe that the justice system that we have can work, and it should work on paper, because it's not just one person pulling the lever to hang somebody. You have many people. You have many people making that decision. And they're your peers. They're people just like you. They can sympathize with you in almost every way. And that's I guess the true crux of the discussion of retaliation is, even then, is it's still justified in the fact that you have all of these peers telling you that, yeah, you're absolutely in the right, so on and so forth, whatever, what have you. But the topic of retaliation is intense for me, because I've always lived my life with trying to stick up for the little guy, or trying to defend the little guy.
Right.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it, young guy. I'm planning on doing this every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm going to pick a topic, and I'm just going to talk about it. So join us again on Tuesday next week, my friend.
Sometimes you'll get, well, almost every time, you'll get me. So, if you like the whole, hey, this topic is going nowhere where it should be, or where it was, if you like that type of stuff, I'm your guy. Because my mind runs all over the place, and it always will, but be sure to support Slay.
Hey, sick. Well, we still got a few minutes here. I kind of wanted to ask a question to the viewers here. Anybody who's still listening and interested. I wanted to ask you guys, in your life, in all the examples of, wrong actions against you, or actions taken against you that were essentially breaking a rule that you were standing by, how did you feel in that moment? Did you have a knee-jerk reaction to retaliate? Did you have a knee-jerk reaction to, well, as we previously discussed, actually, did you have a knee-jerk reaction to let someone else retaliate for you by telling a person of power to carry out the justice, as it were? Or did you have a knee-jerk reaction to carry out that justice to yourself or yourself? A really good thought experiment is kind of playing back those things that had happened to you and really getting to the crux of what decision you made in order to rectify it, or to even just deal with it, and if you would do the same thing now that you're a different person from that event, no matter how recent, even if it happened 4 hours ago, you're still a different person. So, it doesn't matter how recent or how far away it is. But with all of that being said, how did you react? Did you want to retaliate yourself, or did you want somebody else to retaliate for you? And, let me know in the comments whenever this gets posted. Talk about it in the comments, discuss it. I'm interested. I kind of want to get the feedback. I'll go ahead and answer now while we still have a little bit of time, and then we'll let Anime go through and answer as well. And I have always been somebody that my knee-jerk reaction is to invoke justice then and there. It's usually with people that aren't me. So usually any violation or any action taken against me has always been met with patience and, do whatever you feel necessary. If you've been wrong, if you've been wronged, if this had happened, so on and so forth, hit me. Do it to me. I don't care. I can take it. But usually my justification for retaliation always comes from somebody else going through that, or somebody else having something happen to them and I carry out the retaliation for it. Am I right? I don't know. We'll find out. But all in all, that's my knee-jerk reaction. If it's against me, I could care less. If it's against somebody that I love, or even somebody that I feel was 100% in the right for feeling the way that they did and it happened, I will carry out my own justice. But let me know, like I said, in the comments, DM me. I don't care. We'll definitely have a conversation on it. Davey. Oh man. I'm sorry, dude. I wanted to make sure you were at least here. The man who inspired all of this, K.O. Davey, one of my biggest supporters. I love the man. He's a good guy.
That he is. He's a wonderful man. Good individual. Good spirited, great hearted, kind. I would say gentle to the point where you're going to get the respect that you should when first meeting an individual. The man, the myth, the legend.
For those of you watching, we are buttering him up because he is supposed to be the third co-host of this podcast. But unfortunately, he couldn't make it to it for the first episode, which is fine. And we'll probably do a relaunch and have him here for the real official first episode. But I had a lot of fun, Anime. This was good. I know
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know I did a lot of the talking this time, but, you know, I think this was actually a really good idea. I didn't realize that I was craving this kind of chatting. So,
right.
And especially,
me either, to be honest. But I think one of the reasons why I've been so quiet is it is just the two of us. Generally, whenever we've had previous discussions that are similar to like this, there's always been at least three of us. You know,
yeah,
you, Davey, and I, and we are really bouncing off of each other's feedback, and that helps a ton. So when it came to just today, it's been you and I, and so there's just been a lot of stuff where it's like I don't really know how to bounce back with this and give in good positive feedback, and then there's other times where I can and I have, but I've also strayed because my mind is a million places currently.
Well, you're also at work too. But welcome to the podcast, Davey. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm good. My bad. I woke up not too long ago, and yeah, the heat just kicked my ass today at work. So I was asleep until recently. So I'll probably be up until like midnight,
Oh
1, 2.
no.
Right?
Oh God. I'm sorry, man.
No, you're all good. I slept for a solid 4 hours, so it's gonna take me a while to pass back out.
No,
I could sleep for a solid 4 hours.
Dude. So what's really funny about that is I started a recent World of Darkness game, and we were supposed to play Tuesday night, and so for work we poured 5 meters or 5 yards of concrete in a basement, and we had to carry it in wheelbarrows all the way down like a little slope into the basement. That it killed me, and I didn't even realize that. I wasn't that tired when I got home, but I laid down with my little girl, get her to sleep, and I passed right. I lost consciousness. I don't even remember passing out.
Man, those are some of the best, worst things ever. Because then you sleep, you mess up your sleep schedule. But then it's like I was so tired that I just randomly passed out. It wasn't even like oh, I'm tired. You just rest your eyes for a little bit, and then you're out. You wake up, it's dark outside.
Yeah. No, see, I got really lucky because uh, I I was able to just kind of like get back comfy and go back to sleep.
Nice.
But do you have any thoughts on this conversation of retaliation or anything like that? I mean, we can,
Retaliate?
yeah, we can still
No,
keep, we can
you
keep
good.
going. We can keep
Oh
going.
yeah,
Uh,
this episode has been extended. We're in overtime.
right. I have nothing on retaliation as far as the last thing that you said. Yeah, I'm just my instinct is always self. Like I'm gonna defend myself. Probably right there. That's probably not the best reaction because it almost got me in trouble. I went to my first concert Tuesday, and
Oh,
yeah, it was not good. I mean, the concert was good, but I don't like crowds. And, some kid. I heard somebody running behind me. He bumped my shoulder, and he kept running towards the front of the stage. And I told my girlfriend, I was like, "Look, if I hand you my glasses, it's because I'm gonna slap the shit out of somebody for real." And she was just like, "Don't do that. You're gonna mess up." I mean, we paid $900 for the tickets.
god
So
damn.
Who the
yeah, but
fuck did you go
I was like,
see?
fuck. I was like, fuck them tickets. But yeah, I went to Kendrick Lamar's concert for his, I guess his tour opened here in Oklahoma. So yeah, we went to a to that concert. It was a cool experience. Never been to a concert before in my life, but yeah, all the bumping and stepping on people is probably not for me. But I enjoyed myself.
So you've never been to a concert, period, in your life?
No, never in my life. Not a one. I don't like crowds. Like
That
my
makes sense.
anxiety gets a little bad, and then like I'm always looking for people, so I don't like even when I go out places, like I'm always looking to see, who may possibly be able to do harm here or who is like disgruntled. So then when you're in a crowd and you're looking at people, some people are just nonchalantly drunk or high and they're bumping into you. Then you got the other guys that look like they just want somebody to do something. So I'm more people watching. But eventually I was able to actually enjoy the concert. It just took a while.
I got you.
Okay. So
But
to say if I've ever been to a concert, Slay, I'm gonna ask your opinion on this because you know what this is. I'm sorry, Davey. I would like to include yours, but I don't think you personally. Like, I don't think you've even ever heard of what this event is. It's like Speedy Fest.
Yep.
You know how they have performers there.
Yeah.
If you go in, would you consider that going to a concert?
No.
Okay, then I have never been to a concert.
No, all right. So, as somebody who has lived his whole life going to multitudes of concerts, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I can absolutely unequivocally tell you that neither one of those are, or well, the Kendrick Lamar concert is a concert, but the Speedy Fest is not. That you were at Speedy Fest and happened to see a band there. Um,
Well, if you paid to go in like the designated area.
no, I know what you're saying. It was Speedy Fest. A concert is a completely different thing. So the the whole experience of a concert is you're going there solely for the band, and solely for the band just means that they are the only attraction there. There's no rides going on, there's no other events happening. It's just a concert. It's just you and the band, and it's a whole different chemistry. You experience that with whoever opened up for Kendrick, and then Kendrick being the main show.
mm-hmm.
It's just a whole different vibe. So I unfortunately I'm not a Kendrick Lamar fan. Just not a
Mm-hmm.
fan of that music in general. Uh,
Right.
I got nothing against the music. It's not for me. Uh,
Right.
I like anything metal. So even rock. I actually went to when I was younger. I went to a Blue Oyster Cult concert, and that was actually a lot of fun. That was right when I was learning how to play guitars and stuff. But uh, recently, I opened up for Buck Cherry, so that's that's one of my highlights as a musician. But
Mm-hmm.
the atmosphere is just completely different when you go to an actual concert because they're the only attraction there. So when you're watching the shows at other, like if you're there for the Speedy Fest, you're not there for just the band. So it kind of downplays their music just a little bit. Not too much, but it downplays the severity of like their show, their concert, because they're not the only attraction there, so they can't be too distracting. That's not what they're paid to do. They're paid to add music in the background. And I know they had some pretty big performers there and stuff, but ultimately they're providing background music. So, take that for what it is. But when you go to a concert, it's not just about the music. It's about presentation of the music. So that's where you have the cliche pyrotechnics. Some people, I went to a Nickelback concert maybe like, I want to say like 10 years ago. They had
Fucking lucky.
yeah, they had just released their Right Reasons or something. All the Wrong Reasons, Right with All the Wrong Reasons album. The one with animals on it. But they had fireworks, pyrotechnics. They had the whole works, and the show was awesome. Stained opened up for them. It was a really good show. But ultimately, like I said, it was a great show, not only because it was great music, but the presentation was there. You felt the emotion of everything because of the elevated pyrotechnics and the way that the sound was curated for everything. Their tones matched the album, so on and so forth. It's just like going to a concert is just a completely different feeling. Plus, so I've been to Warped Tour like 6 times in a row, like up until the 6th time was the last time. But every time I went there, they had so many stages. You had to like get the schedule right because if there was a band that you wanted to see, you had to make sure that it wasn't conflicting with another band that you wanted to see. And that's a whole other experience in and of itself, if I'm being honest. But what I guess what I'm trying to say here is, when you're sweating with a bunch of people in the mosh pit and you're just feeling the music, and even music that you might not even be familiar with, you're just vibing in general. It's an unreal feeling. There's absolutely nothing like it in the world. There's nothing like it. I'll stand by that.
No, I gotta give it to you. That's a fact. Cause I'm not a big Kendrick Lamar fan anywhere, or at least I didn't think I was. And then he ended up playing some songs. I'm like, damn, he did come out with this. Damn, he did come out with this. And then I was singing it word for word. And then I'm not a big energy guy. Like I'm not.
Hi.
Oh, hello there. They're multiplying. My
Right?
hosts.
Started with just you and me, Slay. No,
I know. Jesus. It's like, hey, the podcast is almost over.
Well,
Anyway,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
join earlier, but it said there was like a limited thing, and I thought it was locked, so I thought I couldn't join it.
No, we had talked yesterday about you joining as well, so I had put you in the select few that can join this channel.
Oh,
And-
this is the podcasting?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Hey, Baney, did you read the title of this channel?
SNF live recording.
Yes. Welcome to Slay and Friends. You're part of episode 1 that will be forever recorded and etched into YouTube history until I delete it.
Hello, episode 1 that is ending soon.
But
Well, there's been an extension.
yes, we're probably going for a little bit longer now.
Well, I shall be here.
Yeah. So, were you tuning in at all? Do you understand kind of what we've been
No,
talking about? Okay,
To join.
gotcha. So, essentially, what we've been talking about for the past hour and a half plus probably like 20 minutes. My stream went down, unfortunately, but We've been talking about the topic of retaliation. Where is it justified? When is it justified? And is there any point that it's good? And just the idea of it in general.
What's retaliation?
So,
Okay.
yeah, if somebody wrongs you in some sort of way, or if you report somebody for doing something wrong and they take actions against you in a way to harm you in some way, to almost punish you for exacting your justice however you seem fit, is a form of retaliation. Essentially, it's a reaction to an action.
Oh, that's exactly what I was just getting ready to say. Like to sum it up, it's
Yeah.
your action against. It's your reaction against someone else's action.
Basically, just revenge.
Yeah. It's a very boiled down version of revenge. Yeah.
Right. So in a way, it's cause and effect.
Yes. Well, cause and effect in the sense of another effect. It's another avenue into effect.
Right.
So let me break this down for you. Here's a scenario that would be considered retaliation. It's one of these scenarios that I've been using all night. If you smack somebody in the back of the head and they turn around and smack you back, they have retaliated against your initial action. That's retaliation. The argument here is if we as a society have agreed that you should absolutely smack that person back in the back of the head, then we should also think about what that implies, in that there are other forms of retaliation that are you break a rule, somebody reports you to an authority, whether it be at a workplace or just to law enforcement in general. You break a rule, and then they then do something in response to you breaking said rule. That is also retaliation, but a lot argue that it's no longer justified. How do you feel about that?
I'm not personally if she did it, then that makes it right to do it to them.
All right.
I feel like you should just leave it at that and try to walk away. And if they keep pushing, like if they make you really upset, then I feel like you could, but I still don't feel like it would be right.
Okay, so you feel like even though your knee-jerk reaction would be to retaliate, you would still try your best to not do it because you feel like it's wrong.
Yes.
So I guess in essence, that's really this whole conversation, how we've kind of went through a lot of hoops to kind of get back to that answer. That pretty much the previous discussion was, in order to retaliate, you have to break that rule that you're upset with the other party breaking. So if you are retaliating against somebody smacking you in the head, and you retaliate by smacking somebody else in the head, you're doing that same action. So what you have justified as wrong, you are now doing that same wrong. So, in an essence, I agree with you. Obviously, it's wrong. You shouldn't do that. In my opinion, there is no form of retaliation that is technically right or the best way to go about it, what have you. What I think is best practice for a lot of things is understanding that we do have a system in place to retaliate for us, which we consider taking the high road, because normally in a criminal sense, if somebody does something criminal to you, you call the law enforcement, they enforce the law, they bring that criminal in front of a panel of their peers, the jury, and they decide whether they absolutely did commit that crime, based on the evidence, so on and so forth. I was trying to stay away from that whole conversation because that's so ingrained in us as a whole, like through elementary school. If somebody hit you, you're supposed to tell the teacher. So it's been ingrained in all of us for so long that you do not retaliate. If you retaliate, you'll be in just as much trouble, if not more trouble, and it's just a bad time for everybody. So, with that being said, I still believe that if somebody does wrong to you and you don't want to wait for law enforcement, then by all means, because I'm a huge proponent, as Davey had put, of defending yourself. Defending yourself is like the basic form of retaliation. I don't consider it retaliation when somebody's threatening your life and you have the means and you're able to defend your life or other lives. I consider that as a duty, kind of as a human here. You want to protect as much life as possible. And if somebody's threatening to take a life, by definition, you would be retaliating by becoming the same thing. But again, I think that that's very easily justified, and a great deal of people would also agree that that's justified. And I think you along with it too, knowing that retaliation is wrong at its core, but you would still agree if somebody has a gun and is threatening to shoot a great deal many people and you have a gun and you have a clean shot to stop that, you would take that. Would you not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where the thought experiment gets a little muddy, because you start really arguing semantics, and that's the hard part. in
I mean,
essence.
personally, I would react with retaliation because I don't have that much self-control, but I don't feel it's right, and every time that I do it, I always apologize after.
That's fair. And I mean, like, I think 99.9% of us would apologize for reacting a certain way to most situations anyway. I guess the real crux of what I'm trying to get at and what I'm really after would be, how do you justify a good retaliation? And I did, in my mind, the best way for me to justify retaliation is with great means of violence that would threaten livelihoods. That's really where I justify my retaliation. And from the stories that I told you yesterday, you understand the lengths that I'll go to defend livelihood. And I can define livelihood in a great deal of ways. Mental health is absolutely one that I will defend with my last dying breath.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But Davey, I haven't heard from you all night. I want to hear your take now on kind of what me and B were just talking about. In the sense of defending livelihood, can you defend, or can you justify retaliation?
Absolutely. But again, it's kind of tough because, I mean, obviously we're all different people. We all have different opinions, different reactions. I'm an instinctually just a reactionary person. So to defend somebody else, or to defend, somebody else's livelihood, my nieces, nephews, family, different stuff like that. Yeah, because I'm already willing to do shit, or probably be, I'll say, excessive in my retaliation on behalf of myself. So what I would do to protect somebody else's livelihood, uh, it wouldn't take a lot, or it would be probably more drastic than it would be for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That was kind of what I was getting at a little earlier, is that I tend to way over retaliate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to go way out there with my forms of retaliation. But yeah, that was pretty much like the whole conversation of the night. I'm really sad that both of you couldn't make it from the start, because I feel like we could have, as things were developing, we could have had a lot of really good dialogue back and forth, especially given our array of not only personalities but experiences as well. So,
Right.
uh,
I'll be back, man. My bad. I
no, you're
was
good.
clump. There was nothing. I thought my girlfriend left and went outside or went and did something because I was snoring. I woke up, she was out. I was like, where'd you go? She says, you were asleep, so I didn't even bother you. It's like, you know what? I appreciate
I can dig it. That's
it. Next one, I'll make sure that I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays, correct?
on that note. It might have to be 2 days in a row. So
Okay.
I think we'll do it today, and then we can convene tomorrow. Tomorrow I can stay up a little bit later than I would normally be able to. I'm a little past my bedtime here, but
Same here.
but I think I want to do this tomorrow. We'll shoot the second episode for tomorrow. B, you're absolutely invited to come back. While I'm at work, I'll think of another topic that we can really hit. But I think I have it in mind. So, kind of things to swirl around in your head for tomorrow would be the thoughts of justification. So,
Mhm.
I
That itself should be tomorrow's topic.
that is tomorrow's topic. Yes. Yeah, justification is going to be the topic that I want to talk about tomorrow. This is a very vague topic on purpose. I kind of I'm hoping what's going to happen with, like, especially all four of us, we interpret this topic very differently, and we all have different things that we can discuss for the duration of the podcast. So please, by all means, think of the most wild, outlandish ways to justify things, because I certainly have a real life example that feels like it was made up in a story with how far justification went. But yeah, no holds bar. I want it all, because I want to get to the bottom of why us humans think that justification is not only okay but necessary for a lot of actions that we take. So that's your homework for tonight. And anybody who's still watching, anybody that's still here, that's going to be the topic for tomorrow's podcast. So again, if you guys have any real life experience with retaliation that you want to share, feel free to do so in the comments. And yeah, with that being said, I wish everybody a really, really wonderful evening and a good day tomorrow, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Good night.
Yes, sir.